Hey folks, welcome to the Breakfast Wrap-Up. In this week's episode, we're going to continue on talking about film adaptations, introducing ourselves from stage left.
I'm Lincoln. Sorry, I am ill today.
Liam, I'm fine.
Also Liam, also fine.
I'm Dom, I'm not fine. Okay, getting straight into it. Liam.
Right, so in terms of film adaptations, I've gone for... So they're both ones that I think are good, but they fall short in some ways. So the first one I've got is Captain America: Civil War. So obviously that's sort of an adaptation of the Civil War comic book in Marvel, and I think it's a good adaptation because it keeps the whole it does what it can with what the MCU has. So it doesn't have the massive roster of superheroes that the comic book has, but it keeps the essence of the story, which is, a big event happens where people are like, oh my God, maybe superheroes are dangerous. And then they have a philosophical dispute where they're like, Captain America's like, we shouldn't have to give our identities for people to feel safe. Whereas Iron Man believes that every hero needs to be registered in order to make sure that we're held accountable for our actions. So there's merit in both sides, and I think the film does it really well, and it manages to make an interesting story out of it. Where I think it sort of falls short is that the comic book, the whole conflict comes from just them disagreeing.
Right.
That's
just
it.
Captain America and
Captain America and Iron Man. It's just them disagreeing. Whereas the film, I think, because it's Disney and it's such a popular property, and they didn't want people to hate Iron Man or Captain America, they had to put a villain in there somewhere, and they are the reason why they're disagreeing over this. They sort of set this whole thing up and everything like that. And that's where I think it falls short, because I think it could have been really interesting if they just kept it as Captain America and Iron Man just disagree on something.
Yeah.
But they disagree on something so much that they need to fight over it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good adaptation in that it keeps all the main plot points. I just feel like they didn't need to add a villain up to it in order to sort of save face for the heroes. Because again, it's one of those things where you could have gone into the film and, we could have come out and you could have gone, yeah, Captain America's right in that. And I could have been like, what are you on about?
Yeah.
Shut up. No, what are you on? Are you weird?
Yeah.
Iron Man was in the right in that one. And it could have led to a bit more of a discussion where sort of like adding a villain in it that is sort of the catalyst for everything happening. It sort of just leaves it into, oh, well, they were tricked,
Who
They would have thought anyway.
Baron Zemo.
Baron Zemo.
Right.
So he sort of orchestrates the whole thing, basically. But even when... So the way it's sort of... They do still disagree by the end of it. Even once they find out the villain was, like, sort of in charge of it all.
Yeah.
They're still kind of like, well, we still don't agree over this thing. But I think they just didn't need to add a villain to that in order to make it interesting. I think it could have been interesting on its own if they just stuck with the comic and it was just them just didn't agree.
Yeah. So they added the villain, and what did he do that was different? Like, so how did he incite it?
He had a whole plan. It's a bit...
Yeah?
It's a bit windy, but basically he set a bunch of events in motion to the point where, like, especially the final fight as well.
Yeah.
Because they start making up towards the end.
Right, okay.
And he reveals something to Iron Man.
Yeah.
It's an old film, probably. I can say what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's
overarching spoiler warning. There you are, you're fine.
So he reveals to Iron Man that Captain America's friend, the Winter Soldier, killed his parents.
Right.
And he finds out that Captain America knew about it.
Yeah.
And he never told him. And he lied about it.
Right.
So that's what the final fight is over.
Not even the original thing they were fighting about then.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's like the final fight, like the iconic fight at the end of Captain America versus Iron Man is due to is due to the villain sort of inciting the incident rather than in the comic book where it's just them being like, I just don't agree with what you're. So they become like basically criminals in the eyes of the law because they're not registered under this superhero act thing. So Iron Man are like obligated to go after them.
Yeah.
And I think it all ends with Captain America shot, doesn't he?
What, in the comic book? Or?
Yeah.
I think he does.
That's what ends the whole thing, I think.
There's also like a few other things that happen in the comic book, I think, where because you can see why they didn't put this into like the mainstream, because Iron Man in the comic book of Civil War does a lot of like really bad shit, of where he'll be like, what is it? Thor, because Thor's not in.
No, he's not.
Not in that one, but in the comic book one, he is. But he rocks up because I think it's what
He's not.
Asgard rocks up above America.
He's not in the comic book.
He's not in the comic book.
It's a robot called Ragnarok.
No, that's what I was going to say.
All right.
Of where Thor's Asgard rocks up above America, and then Iron Man rocks up in front of Thor because Thor's not been there for the entirety of the Civil War. But Thor's like, yo, I heard what you did in the Civil War, and honestly, I don't care. But you took my DNA and made a robot clone of me, and then made him fight up against everybody else in the Avengers. So you can see that they couldn't put something like that into the cinematic universe because that just makes Tony Stark look like really freaking bad.
What else?
Why can't they do that though? Why can't they make Stony Stark look bad? Why can't they make Stony Stark look bad?
They need to sell its toys.
Okay, fair enough.
That's it. They can't have like all of the kids just look over it and be that this person's just genuinely a bad person. Because in like the comic books, you can make so many arguments for certain characters actually being real pieces of shit, and Tony Stark is the easiest. Easiest for it. But in the cinematic universe, he's pretty much a golden boy. He doesn't do, bar him being an asshole, but he's just funny that way. So they make him seem charming, but in terms of the comics, he is generally a bad person.
Also, the other main thing was the whole Spider-Man story arc in the comic book. Because they introduced Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War. They couldn't do his story arc in the Civil War comic.
Isn't Miles Morales got a story arc in it as well?
No.
Because
he's the Ultimate Comics.
Because I was trying to remember one of where in one of the comic books, it's Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel basically sees somebody else.
Civil War 2.
Civil War 2. Because Captain Marvel's like, hey, I've just received this like huge vision and stuff. Well, someone's received a vision. She's going off it. Basically like, oh, Miles Morales kills Captain America. So it's at the point of where they're basically, it's basically like Minority Report.
No, yeah, that's what I was going to say. You'd love Civil War 2 because it's basically Minority Report.
Because they just basically get this info about somebody being there like, oh, somebody's going to kill, this hero's going to kill this hero. And then Captain Marvel appears at that location and is there like, I'm stopping you before you commit the crime. So Miles Morales is basically told in this massive fight that he's going to kill Captain America. And he's like, and I think he's still like 16 at the point, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And he's just there like, but I'm not, I never would do that. And she's there like, yeah, but the vision says that you are, so I'm going to stop you. But Captain America then like appears at that point, grabs Miles Morales by the shoulder and goes, it's okay, kid, let's go. And they just walk off together. But there's loads of, the X-Men as well are in Civil War or Civil War 2 of the comic books.
That's the thing, is there's so many heroes in Civil War, the comic book, that it would have been really difficult for the MCU as it stood at that point to do a proper full-on adaptation. I think that's the reason why they had to take the Hulk out of it, because
he just wrecked the entire squad.
The Hulk would have messed everyone up. Whereas in the comic books, because there's just so many heroes, all with different strengths and everything like that, they could at least counteract him a bit. But yeah, I think it's a really good adaptation, and I think it stands on its own as its own film as well.
It fits well in the cinematic universe.
Yeah. I think it's just, I think for me where it just falls short is the fact that they had to have this whole scheming villain that was sort of pulling the strings all the way through it.
Yeah. I agree with your point that just having the two characters disagree would have been more interesting. I think definitely polarizing the audience like that would have been a fantastic marketing strategy. Because then when you get to the next one, it's like you go in and you're like, oh, I reckon he's going to win. No, I reckon he's going to win. You should get a bit more of that.
It's interesting as well because they didn't want to. We assuming that they didn't want to polarize the audience, but they kind of did anyway because a load of people basically sided with Captain America and Tony Stark on the choice of whether it was morally wrong for Captain America not to tell Iron Man about how his parents died. So loads of people were sort of split on that, and people basically saying Tony Stark was within his right to go nuts and beat the shit out of Captain America and Winter Soldier, because there's I think somebody's done a video essay where they say you can see where Tony Stark snaps, because at first when he finds out that the Winter Soldier killed his parents, you can see him move up to the Winter Soldier, but he's probably just going to hit him at this point. But then Bucky stands in front of him to stop him, and Tony Stark is looking at him like, what the hell? I'm gonna hit this guy, he's killed my parents. And Bucky then is like, yeah, no, I know. And then that's when he's like, you knew? Oh, I'm killing the both of you. That's when he snaps.
Yeah. I also think that the whole idea of the hero's identity has an interesting parallel to real life.
I agree with Iron Man, because think about it, in a real life situation, if a superhero tosses your car at a villain, now you're down a car in it. You're gonna want someone to claim off, aren't you? I think in a real life situation, I think it makes sense.
You work in insurance now. This is what this is about.
It's like that TikTok, isn't it? Of where you're going to your job for the fifth time this week. Superman is throwing your car at doomsday, and you're like,
it's that one of when you see the superhero throw your car and they miss.
You're like, bro.
But my other film that I had was so this one's a video game adaptation, and it's the Prince of Persia film.
Okay. Oh. I love the games. I've never gone watching the film.
So the film, I think, is really good. It's one of those ones that I actually really enjoy because it's a Disney film, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where it's not a one-to-one adaptation. It doesn't really. It loosely adapts the story of Sands of Time in that they have the dagger in it, but the rest is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
But it's one of those ones where I like it because it's not a one-to-one adaptation, but it just keeps the essence of the games.
Yeah.
Because for me, I don't think shot-for-shot adaptations are the right way to go for a game. Because for books and comic books, I understand it. Because book is just words on a page. Comic book is static images. So when you see it in live action or any kind of moving image, you're like, oh my God, this is great, isn't it? I get to see it all come to life. Whereas with a video game, if I was watching a shot-for-shot remake of the cutscenes, I'd be kind of like,
been here, done that.
I can just play this, innit? What more does this offer me than if I just played it? It's just the novelty of seeing it in live action. Whereas I think that's why I think video games need to have something that sets them aside. So video game adaptations. So with the Prince of Persia film, it's a good story on its own, and it keeps the whole fun adventure sort of feel to it. And Jake Gyllenhaal is just amazing man anyway. So, but it's just a really fun film to watch, and it's I have a real love for films that I can just sit down and turn my brain off for 2 hours, because I think there's a lot of films where I don't like to go in and I don't want every film to be a mental exercise where I have to pay attention all the way through. Sometimes I just want to watch people go through and do cool flips and and fight and action sequences and stuff. Because again, with the whole one-to-one thing as well, I'll talk briefly about this, is the new Last of Us series. So that's the first 2 episodes, people were is basically a shot-for-shot remake. And then the best rated episode is the one that completely changes from the game.
Right, yeah.
And I think if the series went on just being a shot-for-shot remake, for me anyway, I feel it would have been oh, okay, cool. Like, Pedro Pascal's doing a good job. I'm going to say Bella Ramsey because I don't know her real name. He's doing a good job and all that. But it's one of those things, again, where it's just sort of like, been there, done that. Mm-hmm. So I think video game adaptations in films, they need to have their own story, but they need to make sure that they keep like the main lore and the essence of the characters and stuff like that. Because it's like, I watched that Assassin's Creed film, and the main point of the games is the historical elements, like, going back and being in history. And the main thing that people keep saying, I need less of the present day, less of the modern day. And then the film was like 80% modern day.
That's disappointing.
And, Michael Fassbender is acting his ass off, but the film's just boring because it's all modern day. And like 20 minutes of it is like assassins in the past.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. It was like, I've been waiting for Assassin's Creed film for so long and they messed it up.
I think it's interesting to sort of think about how you would approach a video game adaptation. Because obviously everything else does go beat for beat. I feel like it's impossible to succeed going beat for beat in a video game. Mm-hmm. And not just because of the whole aspect of, if you played the video game, you've already seen it, but also because people play video games differently. Yeah. Like, one person's playthrough is going to look different to another.
Yeah,
Like Assassin's Creed, for example, is the story entirely linear?
No.
Well, linear in the point of like,
it goes from point A to point
B. Yeah, when you go through, well, not so much in the latest ones, but in the earlier ones, you just play the story missions, the cutscenes play it the same every time.
Yeah.
But like,
fair.
You can approach missions. So if they did like an episode that was one missions for say, and the entire mission was stealth in the show, when I went through, I could have just absolutely gone through and just clattered everyone.
So that's what I want to get to, really, is that there are decisions to be made, and I feel like it's impossible to sort of capture the audience's expectations entirely.
Yeah.
In that, half your audience will have played it one way, half will have played it another way. And the half that didn't play it the way that they saw in the film, they're going to be disappointed because they're like, I was expecting something different.
Well,
I did it this
That's
way.
something that actually came up in the new Last of Us series. Someone made a joke and they were like, so going off the Last of Us TV series, the canonical way to play this mission was to try and stealth it and then to fuck up and then get...
Yeah.
And then just shoot everyone.
To be fair, that's what happens in Assassin's Creed, like, all the time. Like, right, I'm not going to be seen doing this. You try doing the missions, like, first person siege, you're like, I'll just start swinging.
I will replay the mission. I will restart the mission over and over until I can do it.
There are two types of gamers. Those who are there, like, I'll restart it to get perfect stealth, and those that are there, like, stealth. You mean the name of my shot?
Especially if one of the optional objectives is try and complete this mission without being detected. I will restart that mission over and over until I can do it. I will learn any patterns.
The only Assassin's Creed I've fully completed, like, all achievements on was the first one. I just remember just, like, hunting feathers. It was so... I don't mind a game with collectibles. Don't get me wrong. But this is such a tangent right now. Assassin's Creed, though. Yeah, I don't mind collectibles at all, and like sometimes I'm not particularly bothered with it, but like the first Assassin's Creed, it felt achievable to just like go and get them all.
Yeah.
I sunk so many hours just like climbing to places that you no reason to be there, but there was a feather there, so I went there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but by the end of it, I was like burnt out. I was really burnt out of collecting. I was like, oh God, more feathers.
That's Ubisoft's whole formula now.
I 100% in Assassin's Creed 2. I collected all the feathers.
Did you?
All the secret too. I did everything in that game.
After the first one, I was just burnt out on collectibles for a little bit, so I just kind of skipped all that and kind of stuck to main story. Like, I done all side quests and all that, like those bits and pieces, but when it came to collectibles, I was like,
See, the way I play video games now is I get into a region, I do everything in the region first, and then I do the story mission.
Yeah, I used to be like that. I try and not do that now because I do get burned out, because I done the same with Final Fantasy 15 where I was like, right, unlock this region. Like, I had the walkthrough for that because it was bought for me as a gift. And I was kind of like, right, what do I need to do in this area to like make sure I don't miss stuff? Which I kind of didn't do for the first playthrough. I should have like kept the walkthrough for the second playthrough and kind of like done it that way.
Yeah.
But I went through and done all the collectibles, all the sort of like side quests, and I got so burnt out, I just had to stop playing for a good while. I was like, nah.
Yeah. My general approach is try not to miss anything story. If a collectible doesn't give me anything other than, well done, you collected it,
yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm making a slight exception because I've been playing Mario Odyssey recently.
Yeah.
And in that game, I'm just finding it feels good to get all the collectibles.
Okay.
But it's also very small and contained maps. So I feel like it's not too much of a thing. And there are challenges to get to said collectibles.
All right.
So,
okay.
you know, all different puzzles, platforming, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't mind that because like, you're sort of doing something to get it. But if it's just, I'll go here. Like Need for Speed games are terrible for that with the collectibles.
Yeah.
Like you get a little bit of a cash reward for getting the collectibles, but it's token.
Yeah.
So for them, can't be bothered. But if there's some sense of achievement or you get some reward, I'm there for it.
The ones I hate in terms of like secrets and collectibles, I guess, Final Fantasy, which is why I generally do get a walkthrough for them. They're so obscure.
Really?
Like the objectives you've got to do, like it's so in 10, you've got like you go through the first area because everyone can get an ultimate weapon that can like break damage limits and stuff like that. End game.
Yeah.
If you've done certain things throughout the game, like every character has a celestial weapon that you can unlock.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. And first time I played through, I didn't have the walkthrough. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I really enjoyed that game. I was like, oh, I'm going to like pick the walkthrough up, and kind of like the artwork was nice and it was the first walkthrough I'd ever bought. So it's like, I'm going to replay it with the walkthrough. And it's like, right, this is a chest. Don't open it because if you open it, you can't get the celestial weapon at the end. It's like, how is anybody going to know that's like without somebody just sitting there and telling them?
Yeah.
And then there's like different objectives and like side games and things. And then there's like entire summons, like temples that you can go to towards the end that you would never know about. Like nobody instructs you to go there. You just kind of find it. And it just feels like impossible to complete or like find all these secrets without a walkthrough. And I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I just want to be able to play and get like all the content, like not given to me on like a silver plate or anything, but like easier to access in games like that. 100%. Anyway, tangent over.
Anyway, that was my two films that was tangents. So. Let's go next.
Mine in terms of adaptations, so it's a book adaptation, book to film, and it was awful. Eragon.
Oh my god!
Oh.
Yeah, it's so bad.
I was obsessed with that film.
The film, don't get me wrong, like if you sit down and you watch the film, it's good for what it is. It's fun. It's got dragons. It's got magic. It's got fancy adventure. Like it's a decent film. It's not like a blockbuster. It's not amazing acting or amazing script writing. It's just kind of like it is what it is kind of thing. It's one of those very sort of mid films, background noise films.
I was going to check. So Eragon is the one of where it's the guy that is a dragon rider.
Yes.
And they link to their dragons.
Yes.
Because their dragons also talk.
Yep. So they talk to each other. So the dragon will. So there's eggs. Dragon eggs exist. They will only hatch in the presence of their rider. Mm-hmm. So like it's the dragon chooses who its rider is going to be almost. Mm-hmm. So the sort of base story is that the entire realm is under tyranny of the king, and the king has the only dragon because he's killed all the dragon riders, killed all the dragons. He's hoarded all of the eggs, so he's collected all the eggs from the land. Mm-hmm. And the opening scene is this elf warrior who'd gone and stolen an egg and spelled it away from the king, and to find its rider, which is Eragon. So Saphira, who's Eragon's dragon, gets spelled away as an egg. Eragon finds it while he's out hunting. Egg hatches. Story kind of unfolds from there. But the books, it's a 4-part book series. So you got Eragon, Eldest, Brisinga, and Inheritance. So it's the Inheritance cycle, it's called as a whole. Oh. But it's so much potential. Honestly, like the Inheritance cycle is probably my favorite book series ever to exist. Like Christopher Paolini, who's the author of it, wrote Eragon when he was like 16, 17. He was really young. I think he published when he was like 17, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it took a couple of years. I think it was like 4 years between each book release. For the 4 then. Brisingair is by far the best of the 4. But the problem with the film is that it was great as a standalone, but it done that, like, I think it's very cliche now, where it just didn't stick to the story. But it didn't do it so much so that they couldn't continue it. Like, they missed so much of the, like, core material out for, like, the sequel for Aldous, Brisingair and Inheritance, that there was just no logical way to sort of, like, get from the film to the ending.
Yeah.
It ends on a cliffhanger, though, doesn't it? We're showing. I hate that I remembered his name. I haven't watched his for years, but Galvatorix.
Yeah.
It ends with him showing off his dragon. You see his
he
dragon,
cuts the curtain at the end, and the dragon comes through.
John Malkovich as well.
But I think it's very cliche. I think a lot of book to film adaptations in particular do it, where they miss out so much of the core material that, like, a sequel just doesn't happen then.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So that's my...
See, I have this whole thing where, so I know the film that Dom's going to talk about, but I have this whole thing where if I haven't read or seen the source material, I usually just end up liking the film anyway. Because Eragon, I used to love that film. I used to, like, watch it a lot.
I still watched it a lot. I thought it was cool as a film. For me, it was very much like a background noise movie.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this to you before. It's probably controversial, but I say the same about, like, the Transformers films and, like, generally, like, action-y films in general. It's like, oh, a big fight scene, stop watching, cool, like, carry on some work now.
Yeah.
Like that kind of vibe.
I get it, yeah.
But Eragon's very much like a background noise movie for me.
I had to look up then, because I was like, they do that a lot, right? You say, because they did something similar with a film that came out called Mortal Engines. There we go. I was wondering how many of these you've noticed.
Mortal Engines. That series is so good.
Mortal Engines.
The books are phenomenal.
Mortal Engines came out with this trailer, and from what I gathered from it, it was just basically some apocalypse happens. So all of the big cities like London, Paris, and all stuff like that basically have this genius idea. I don't know how the hell it works, but you know what? We'll just suspend disbelief for it because it sounds awesome. They put all of their cities on massive tanks and run those tanks around. So what would happen there was like, because why is it? They're like, oh no, it's London, because London's one of the biggest of the tanks. And the one smaller tank's trying to get away, and then London will shoot out some massive grappling hook, grabbing in that tank, and then absorb that city.
Yeah, kind of. It is,
but
it eats it. Like, it doesn't eat it, but it, like, consumes it into the lower levels of the city. It gets broken down. They discard what they don't need, but then the resources from that city, the smaller city, go into, like, the furnace to power the engine of their city, and it's very much like
recycle.
What happens when you're running a cities to capture?
Well, that is the point. It gets to that point in the books, and in the I can't remember where the film takes it.
As well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a Sky City which ends up almost getting blown up. Basically, gets blown up. Spoiler. It gets to that point. So there's an area that's kind of been blockaded from these Roman cities, these big machines, beyond the wall that they've created. It's very much like the cities don't exist. It's green pastures. It's but like a different lifestyle, it's a different way of living. Like, they haven't gone to the mechanical city sort of regime then, I guess. And yeah, it's such honestly, the books are phenomenal. It's very political. There's a lot of, like, I don't know how to say it, but yeah, there's a lot of politics in it between, like, the different cities and the leaders and things like that, sort of assassins you and kind of, but it's great books. The film was terrible.
Book.
Yeah.
Thinking man's book.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that a lot with all of the adaptations from books. films. They if you see something like Mortal Engines or Eragon, of where they do like you see the one and then it doesn't pick up after that, it is usually because they didn't follow with the source material. So not a lot of people.
Let's not discount the fact though that a lot of books, if you were to adapt them 1-to-1 into a film, that film would be massive.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Like it's always going to be difficult to adapt a book into just a single film, just because there's so much that people put into books.
Sometimes yes and no, because I try thinking of like whenever you see books that are like, because we've seen The Hobbit where the book was like 300 pages. And they stretch that.
That's 300 pages.
There's 300 pages and they stretch it out to 3 films. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, like the Harry Potter books, like the first one, I think is about 380 pages.
I don't think it's that big.
No, it's probably smaller.
I think it is
and
smaller.
you can fit all that into like one film.
You can read
Dom's
Philosopher's Stone in a day.
He wouldn't have had a problem if they'd split The Hobbit into 2 films.
I could have accepted that.
It's the fact that they tried to put it into 3.
Well, they added stuff, because I'm pretty sure, the guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Legolas isn't in the Hobbit book.
No, he's not.
Yeah. So
223 pages, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, so if 223 pages is like comfortable for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and I sometimes feel like that one's a bit padded. That one's a bit long.
Yeah.
They stretch that one out. I feel like if a book is 400 to 500 pages, unless it's like, really in-depth George R. R. Martin world building, you can comfortably put that into an hour and a half, maybe 2-hour film.
Yeah.
It's literally just sometimes that writers will see it and be there like, this stuff isn't needed, but it is. It's just boring.
Yeah.
Because another example I would give is, say, like, it's not an adaptation, but if you look at like the Star Wars films, the prequels, isn't there a full like 20-minute bit where they're in the Senate and it's just talking politics?
Bro, that's most of the prequels, to be honest.
Yeah.
And most of the prequels, if you watch them, it's
just
people
them
walking and talking whilst going to somewhere. Or they're in the Senate. Because there's one bit where they were like, they're talking about bloody trade routes and delegations, and I'm like, why?
Fast forward this.
Why? I came here to look at lightsabers.
There's key points in a book, and when you think about it as well, whenever you're reading some books, it's usually a lot of the characters' inner thoughts and the characters. The characters basically viewing the world. When you get to like say Harry Potter and then J.K. Rowling's writing down basically, this is what the wizarding world looks like when Harry's first walking into the area. Yeah. You don't need to have Harry be there like, wow, I can't believe this is all that stuff there. You just show it.
Yeah.
If there's a scene of where Harry sees a bunch of owls and he's there like, oh my, like look at all of these different creatures, then you just have a shot of 4 or 5 seconds of him walking past a pet shop and just put all this different wacky stuff in there. Put a tiny dragon in the background as an Easter egg for all those fans who like watch it 17 times afterwards and go, look at that. It's a dragon. Like, it's easier if it's 400 or 500 pages to do the visual side of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they just keep screwing up the political or like social part of it because they just go, we won't put that in because nobody's going to care about it. Yeah. And then they get to the actual
wrong they are.
We're going to go to the second film and they're just there like, we have nothing to base it off.
Do you think that's a fundamental problem with these things being rewritten? Because we see it a lot where writers for films either don't like the source material or just don't understand it the same way that the core audience does.
Yeah.
Like, is that just a fundamental problem with writing an adaptation?
Now, I say nowadays it might be because there's so many different stuff that's come out recently. And you'll see in the news of where, like, it's The Witcher, like, using as an example of where, like, a lot of the staff came out and basically said that they didn't like the source material.
Yeah.
And it's just like, then why are you on the... Because you can be on it and not like the stuff. But it's also the fact that if you haven't got a passion for the world, why are you here in the writing department for it?
Yeah. I think it's mainly if you're a writer on an adaptation and you don't enjoy or even care about the source material, that's an issue. Obviously, if you're in like the lighting or something like that.
Oh yeah,
those guys don't need to.
Yeah, okay. It's like
those guys can hate again. Like Harrison Ford always takes the mick of where he doesn't like Star Wars, but he's like a good example of someone who doesn't like Star Wars but is really good at his job.
Yeah.
So keep him in. because he's really good. But
I think that goes back to that statement of like, or the statement that I would make of the people making the creative decisions need to care.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford in this example isn't exactly making creative decisions. He's adding something to the character.
That goes back to the Last of Us adaptation, because people flipped out because the director told the two main actors not to play the games and not to look at any footage of them.
Sure.
And people were like, "Oh, how are they making an adaptation if they don't know the characters and stuff like that?" But it's like,
That's
read the script. If they read the script and they read the character descriptions, but then it also lets them give their own take on it.
Yeah.
But like, so I would say even the actors at some point don't need to know what the source material is, but it does help sometimes. Like Henry
100%.
Cavill in The Witcher, he gave an amazing performance in that because he understands the character.
He's one of the few saving graces for it.
Yeah.
Because what I think it's The Witcher came out. Some of the I think some of the Star Trek writing staff from the Netflix when it came out that they didn't like it. The one that annoys me the most with Netflix is Cowboy Bebop. Literally because of the fact they've done it with One Piece now, where One Piece they got the manga writer in.
Yeah.
For the Cowboy Bebop one and the Death Note Netflix one, they didn't get the writers in. They just cut them out. They said no, we don't want your input on it.
The Death Note.
So the writers actually offered to come in
to help, and they said
they just said no.
They said no. Cowboy Bebop.
You have to be.
Cowboy Bebop's one as well annoys me because it came out and everyone they were showing off all this stuff and like, you know, never badmouth the actors and stuff and like all that. It's not right. But what happened is a lot of the fans were basically like, oh, this is bad because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And then the actors and actresses were basically like, oh, the fans of all of the mangas and stuff, they're just idiots. And they're all like incels. And I was just like, okay, you've just offended your main fan base.
Yeah.
Because who else cares?
Who else cares about this?
Yeah.
And if you're there, like, if it was there, like, you know, people coming in with fresh eyes, like, oh, I've never seen Cowboy Bebop before. I'm going to take this writer's. So here's a question. If you're adapting a story, but you're not taking any of the creative liberties of the writers, the original writers, at what point is it no longer an adaptation, but someone else just copying the story?
Yeah, a bit like fan work.
Yeah, like a fan work.
Yeah.
Because if I was to be there like, oh, you know what, guys, I'm going to do my own fan version of Star Wars because I hated the like sequels, so I'm going to do my own free. And instead of Rey becoming a Skywalker, I'm going to make it, it's John Boyega. I'm going to make it all about John Boyega and his character, and I'm not going to have Rey in it.
Mm-hmm.
If I just release that then, and then I made a film about it, Disney would immediately be on my ass and be like, oi, you can't do that.
Funny, that just reminded me of something. I saw an article yesterday, funny enough. Lord of the Rings the creators of, have instructed a bin collection company to change their name because they've called themselves, I don't know how long they've been named this, but they're called Lord of the Bins. One collection to remove it all.
No, that's genius.
Honestly.
They have to leave that.
I know,
please.
and I'm like, they're not competition. Like, come off it. Let them have some fun with it.
Different,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I take my hat
so
off to
sad.
them for like coming up with the name. I'm like, it's so good. It's so funny.
I imagine that they would. The Lord of the Rings creators would lose that if it's a trademark battle.
Do you reckon?
Yeah,
it's
was
got to be
reading about it
similar
before,
fields, isn't it?
Yeah, with trademark battles, it's a thing of you have to be able to prove that the average consumer could reasonably confuse the two.
Yeah.
You can't in this instance,
No.
I don't think.
It's not like they call it like the Ring Lord or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that reminded me of that article.
But yeah, like in terms of just, you see like the writing staff will take Cowboy Bebop and just basically be like, okay, we're just going to change these characters. It's like, at what point is it now just fan fiction and no longer just the original like idea of it? Because sure, like I think what is it? 50 Shades of Grey is a fan fiction of Twilight, but you can see the similarities, but they're entirely different projects.
Yeah,
when you see them in actual what they are. But with Netflix's Cowboy Bebop, if you were to put them side by side, you can see exactly where the copies are.
Yeah.
But then you'd be there like, this is an entirely different show.
Yeah.
And it's just like, at what point at what point do you think that the writers could immediately be there like, hey, I want to sue? Because
this is that close.
Because it's just that close. But these writers have basically stolen the idea. Because again, they pay for the rights. So I guess that they're allowed to do what they want. But then at the exact same point, they're changing so much of it that it's no longer the original source.
Yeah.
Because again, like with Sonic the Hedgehog film, like they changed a lot of it, but they stick to the original source.
I think they stick to the original source in a lot of instances. Not all of it, though. Like the fact that it's taking place on Earth in the films. I know we talked about this a lot last episode.
Yeah.
But, they change where it's taking place. They're changing where Eggman is from. They're changing a lot of things, but that doesn't have a massive impact.
So I think it's as long as you keep the main essence of the games and like the characters and everything like that. Like Sonic in that film is Sonic.
Yeah.
Tails is Tails. Knuckles is Knuckles. Eggman is Eggman. If not, Jim Carreyified a little bit, in it. But all the characters are still the same, and it's still an adventure film.
Yeah.
At heart, and the whole thing is friendship and stuff, which is a big part of the games as well. Sonic he has his whole lineup of friends basically.
Yeah.
That's where I think like I said, is as long as you keep the essence of the games and like the main sort of themes behind them.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want with the story, as long as it's not detrimental to that theme.
Yeah.
At least as long as the story's not, Sonic's gone off and got a gat and started running down people,
Yeah. I think Sonic's an interesting case though, because the games, at least the first two, have a story that's presented to you, but it's not like there's any dialogue in it or anything.
No, that's true.
Yeah. So the writers for Sonic couldn't have copied it even if they tried. Because what they're going to do beat for beat. Oh yeah, Sonic rocks up. He's in a field and he's doing loop-to-loops and he's running fast. Now he's in a casino. Now he's in an underwater stage. Like that would have been
kind
a
of had
film.
just free reigned, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the later Sonic games have stories, and I hope they pick up on some of that.
Yeah. I'm just imagining a 4-hour film of Sonic just running fast and the background changes. And Hollywood's like, job done.
Yeah.
The gamers want it accurate.
It's literally just a 2D. It's like, this is a 2.5-hour Sonic film.
They get the voice actor as Sonic and it's just, woo, yeah, got it. It's just that for a 4-hour.
People just take the clips from the game, take the effects out of the adventure games. Don't add anything to it.
That would be fun.
So who's up for a new project?
Should we quickly do dogs?
Yeah, what have you got?
The Last Airbender.
No.
Oh.
The Last Airbender.
No.
So again,
compartmentalize my brain to forget that was
again, I did the same thing as I do with Eragon, where I'd never seen or had any connection to the source material.
Yeah.
And I watched that film, and I was in the cinema as a little baby boy, and I was like, oh wow, that was really cool. That was really good. And then I watched it again recently in the last year with you after watching the entirety of the series. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually disgusting.
How dare they make this?
Oh, yeah.
It was just, it was so, the pace was so quick in it.
Yeah.
Because they skip over
much.
So much.
Yeah.
And to be fair, trying to fit an entire season into one film is a bit of a stretch.
It was
but they skip over so much of it.
Like, how many episodes? Like, how long is that season?
26 episodes.
26 episodes, 20-minute episodes.
Yeah. I did do the calculation.
But it's like, it's so quick. Like, the pace is so, we're here, we've done this, now we're here, we're doing this, and now we're here, we're doing it, and then suddenly it's the end of the film.
Gotcha.
But the most egregious thing I think about that film is the lack of humour. It takes itself so seriously.
They just killed Soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer is not the same character. No. He's just a bumbling idiot. And I think the series did a really good job with Soccer. Yeah. Because you start off, and I'll be honest, I did not like Soccer at the start of the series. Like, he's just an asshole. Yeah. He's being horrible to his sister. Yeah. Like, just constantly. But in the series, they use him as, like, someone who really reflects on himself and learns, and, they show the depth of his character really well. In the film, He's bumbling around, being an asshole. Falls for Yue in like 3 seconds. They have the quickest fling known to man.
Yeah.
Which is set up like the entire thing. And that's one was going to be one of my points is Yue's story. Yeah. Completely ruined, even though that's like the finale of the film.
It's just like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes. Like the way that they set it up. Like you're just watching it like, this is really quick. This is never going to work as a relationship.
Yeah.
So when you get to the point, and spoilers, when you get to the point where Yue's there like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice myself.
Yeah.
You don't feel anything for it. It's like, I've known you 5 minutes and you're paired with the asshole that I don't like. Why do I care?
Yeah.
But like, because they said, didn't they? The director, M. Night Shyamalan, he watched the series and he said he loved it.
Mm.
But for some reason, when he made the film, he just took all the humor out of it.
Yeah.
He made it a completely serious film.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think there was one joke in that film.
No.
There might have been. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
whatever they weren't memorable enough. Like,
no, I think they got 4 key points, didn't they, in the film, if I remember right. 5 if you include the opening. So they got the opening where Anne comes up the ice, go to the air temple.
Finds out about what the Fire Nation did.
Yeah, rescue from the Fire Nation in that like airbendy
he gets captured. Yeah,
captured in the Earth Nation.
Yes.
And then finale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's kind of like the 4 key points they hit.
Big fight.
Yeah. But they miss so much in between. It just kind of, like you said, that just kind of happens in the space for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Also, the acting was just terrible in that film as well.
Oh.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I never picked up on it as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh my God, that's so bad. Like, there were so many lines in that film, and I was like, they didn't let them try that again, or
yeah. So going back to one of the points about them cutting a lot of content, when I wrote my notes, I wrote down that there's about 8 hours of total content in the show, but the whole film is only an hour 43.
Yeah,
like you can make longer films than that.
Yeah,
and it confuses me, especially with M. Night Shyamalan saying that he liked the series. Why didn't he make it longer? You could have made 2.5 hours to fix the pacing. Go for it.
I've got a question for you then. For you then, would it have been a better film if... So you can pick one or the other now. Would it have been a better film if it was longer and it fit more things in, and so the pacing could have been better?
Mm-hmm.
Or would it have been a better film if they kept it the same length, pacing was the same, but they just made it not so serious? Like it was actually the same level of humour as the series.
I think I would have gone for a longer film.
Yeah.
And pacing. So...
Because it is super quick, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really quick. I think the pacing is the most egregious part of it.
Okay.
Because the pace of the series is so important to how the characters develop.
Yeah.
Particularly Yue, particularly Sokka. You know, those characters don't grow. You don't get any affection for them without that time to actually appreciate them and get invested in their story.
I can't think of his name, the prince.
Zuko.
Yeah. Like his story is totally lost.
Yeah. They ruined Ozai.
You don't, like, spoiler, but well, I did anyway, I don't know about you lot, but I went on the journey of, like, oh my God, please kill him, to I pity you, to I love this guy.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Like, that's, like, his kind of, like, my reaction to his story arc. And all it was like, oh, I hate you. And then he, like, backs down at the end, and then I'm like, you're a pussy.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no development of his character. There's no, like, oh, I understand why you're backing down. It's like, oh, you just
he has one of the best villain redemption arcs in any movie I've ever seen.
Oh, it's so good.
To the point where when him and Uncle Iroh, like, reunite at the end, I was in tears, bro.
So emotional, that scene. So emotional. But yeah, no, they completely did Zuko wrong.
Yeah, they did.
They also missed out all of the conflict between him and Katara.
Yeah.
Because the series spends a lot of time setting up their specific conflict, ready for later when they actually do team up. And there's conflict, and it's fantastic.
It's that thing in it where he says to her, how about a rematch? What's this still on an iceberg made entirely of water? She just bodies him.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm going to say is a massive shame about that film is they revealed Ozai. In the first season, you know who Ozai is.
Yeah.
You know he's the Fire Lord. And they built him up by showing you the Agni Kai between him and Zuko, and you see why it happens. but at no point in the series do you actually see his face.
Yeah.
They revealed him straight away. Yeah. And he's there making strategic decisions all throughout. And I'm like, where did he come from?
Yeah.
Like, that's something they just inserted.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I think, you lose out on, if you see him straight away and you see him just doing stuff. When the first time they show him is just the Agni Kai, and then they never show him again, it lets your imagination run wild about how evil is this person. When you just see him there just shit around on a table, like, in it, you're kind of like, oh, okay, he doesn't seem that scary. Like,
the whole larger than life in the building of the series gone.
Yeah.
Deceased. Finished.
So, final thoughts, I guess. Adaptations, yay or nay?
Adaptations in general, yay. I'm all for it.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with doing an adaptation. Yeah. I think you just have to take the project seriously.
Yeah.
Like, writers have to like the source material.
100%.
You gotta get good talent with any film, so that's not really specific to adaptation. Yeah. But I think that the writers have got to be on board, and you have to have a bit of respect for the fans, because they're the ones that are actually going to support you first and spread the word to people who are new to the IP.
I think the fans are more so important when it comes to like a more niche market. So like Avatar, we've got like anime fans that would have seen it, and then obviously you've got additional fans that would just be going because the film looks cool. So when you've got like those more niche markets, I think the fan base is more important, especially for an existing like established fan base. But I agree. I'm a yay for adaptations.
Yay for adaptations.
Yeah, still yay. Like I said, there's ones that have turned out really good. It's just the ones that are bad are just really bad. So I think, like you said, it just needs to be like people need to make sure that they actually care about the project before they start doing anything on it. Like,
yay for adaptations as well.
Yeah.
If writers need to understand that if they're going to change the original idea of what the source material is and put into something else, don't make an adaptation. Just make your own generic film. Don't ruin like an entire franchise of stuff. Because there's a lot of fans that are like waiting for their own versions of these like films and books to come out.
Yeah.
And you don't want to like antagonize and piss off an entire community.
Yeah.
Just because you think that your idea is better. Yeah. If you think your idea is better, then just make a film.
Do you think that those writers that get an IP and just change everything, do you think they just get the IP to try and get people on board to try and buy into marketing that way?
I think it's a mix between the writers and the producers.
Yeah.
Because you see it in are you speaking?
No, I was going to say I don't think it's such a bad idea, because jumping back to Harry Potter, like, I like the fact that the new game that's coming out, Hogwarts Legacy, which has obviously been adapted from the books, they're using the world, but have created something that's never been written before.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's going backwards, but I don't see that being a problem the other way either. So, say you took Harry Potter and it was just books, the films hadn't been made, for example, I don't think it would have been a problem for them to release, like, the Grindelwald series after the books to be like, this is a standalone, kind of like, it's the world of Harry Potter, it's the world you know and love, and our adaptation on that. But the story is like a branch off, like, it's not what you know. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's good for franchises in general.
Oh, no. I agree with you. I'm saying on the fact of, imagine if they took the Harry Potter films, but instead of Harry Potter being Harry Potter, they then were there like, instead he's a rich kid that comes from this different area.
Okay.
Not saying like, if you get, because we have like the Game of Thrones TV series that's just come out recently. That's an example of where they've just basically gone, hey, this is something that happened in the past. We'll get a bunch of writers and make something on this. 100% fine, do that. But if you're there, like, again, we'll use Doom as an example. Be there, like, they get the Doom thing and go, ignore that. But we'll still call it Doom.
Dragon Ball.
Or Dragon Ball.
Wait, Goku's a high school teenager.
Instead of an alien from space.
Side note on adaptations, just popped into my mind, The Forest as a film.
Oh.
It literally just came to me. I was like, yes.
Don't. We could probably do that as another episode. The Forest as an adaptation for a film would be incredible.
Well, things we'd like to see adapted.
Yeah. I know for Domos, I've said for ages that Frostpunk as a TV series you literally could do it like a mix between Game of Thrones and Snowpiercer.
I was going to say Snowpiercer.
It would absolutely kill in the market. It would be so good. Because all you have to do for it is just go, hey, here's these characters, because there's no characters in Frostpunk. You just have there's one. The player. So you just have to, you can just basically be there like an entire story of like all of these characters. Again, like, you just have all these characters you can just make up inside the world and be like, yeah, cool. All you need to do is go, right, there's a generator. They need it to live. Let's make characters, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all Hollywood has to do.
Yeah.
That's all Netflix has to do.
My slight tangent before call time. Snowpiercer TV show, not the film. Lena Hall, she's the one that plays the Nightcar owner. Have you heard her covers? I think might have shown a couple of you. I think we spoke about this before. Yeah.
They're amazing.
If you get a chance, have a look. Lena Hall, she covers a load of stuff on YouTube. She's on Spotify as well. But I was not expecting it. I kind of like looked up a couple of the songs that were playing in the show because they just sounded really good. And yeah, she's so good. I love her. Absolutely love her.
Cool. Right. Let's wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Folks, thanks for tuning in to the Breakfast Wrap Up. We've been your hosts. Introduce yourself again.
Lincoln.
Liam.
And I'm Dom. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.